Good evening and welcome. This is the July 8th edition of 1986. I'm Roger Mudd.
And I'm Connie Chung. Tales of adventure tonight. Adventure and dedication and accomplishment. From some pilots you're about to meet, to a Hollywood director turned detective, to a dancer turned Pied Piper.
First, the pilots. If anybody gets credit for silencing Muammar Gaddafi, it's America's military pilots. Of course, the Navy's carrier pilots are doing the impossible every day. Our brief visit to the carrier Enterprise proved that. We will not tell you the names of the pilots, only the nicknames, because the Navy says their families might be subjected to harassment if we did. So we will not. But we will tell you that they are a breed apart.
Temperature 75 degrees, be a case 1 launch on button 15.
As a fighter pilot, my mission is to respond to the tasking I'm given. I spend most of my days and most of my energy preparing myself and staying prepared.
The Navy's carriers, there are now 13 of them, and the men who fly their planes are at the point of the Reagan administration's diplomatic and political sword. The 90,000-ton Enterprise carries about 90 airplanes. Only a third of them are offensive weapons, however. They are the A-6 and the A-7 attack bombers. These are the planes which sank a Libyan gunboat and destroyed the Benghazi base in April. The rest of the aircraft are assigned to protect the vulnerable carrier itself. There are the F-14s, the Tomcats, high-performance interceptors, the fighter planes. There are the S-3s, the anti-submarine planes. There are the Hawkeyes, the flying radar control centers. There are the Prowlers, which jam the enemy's radar and electronics. Every morning, noon, and night, planes from the carriers of the U.S. fleet in the Mediterranean, like the Enterprise, are launched here as part of the Reagan administration's response to Middle East terrorism. Over there, just beyond the southern horizon, is Muammar Gaddafi's so-called line of death. It used to be called gunboat diplomacy. It still is.
Attention to brief, we've got
The Navy proudly tells its visitors that Gaddafi's planes may be back in the air, but no longer do they venture north of the line of death. Nonetheless, Enterprise pilots are flying almost every day. Below deck, the squadron-ready rooms are always open and active.
Once airborne, I think we'll have a good day. The weather looks good in the area. Remember, there are some hot areas to the northwest that we want to stay away from.
This is Ike. He's a 28-year-old lieutenant, a Naval Academy graduate. He's married. He grew up in Milledgeville, Georgia. His grandparents used to take him to the Atlanta airport to watch the planes. He's an F-14 pilot, and the Navy says he's a candidate for Top Gun school.
In my opinion, the F-14 is probably the air superiority fighter of the day. I think it's the best airplane out there. It's fast, and I like that.
But carrier aviation is not just a flat top and a bunch of planes. A carrier battle group would include at full strength 2 cruisers, 6 destroyers, 4 frigates, 4 supply ships, and 2 attack submarines. Such an armada would be the most expensive weapons delivery system in the history of warfare. Roughly $18 billion to build and operate for a year. What a carrier lacks in offensive punch and cost effectiveness, it makes up in mobility and a freedom to operate without any other country's permission. On the Enterprise, there are 275 pilots, but there's a crew of 5,500 men, most of them teenagers actually, 3,000 to run the carrier, 2,500 assigned to the air wing. All but a few hundred are below deck during flight operations, so they don't know the deck as a place of smoke, flame, parching heat, jet fumes, and occasional moments of terror. You guys don't spend much time on the deck, do you?
As little as possible.
Why is that?
Well, the deck's a dangerous place. You got airplanes, propellers, people taxiing around, and we're not really trained to operate on the flight deck. The guys you see around here, they're all pros. They know exactly what part of the deck they're supposed to be on, where to be, and when to be there, and we don't. And we come up and man our airplanes, we launch, we're done, we get off the deck. Right.
Which is your plane?
Right over here.
And what are those called?
Okay, these are AIM-9 Sidewinders.
Sidewinders.
That's right. And we carry 3 on this flight, 2 on this side, 1 on the other side.
And that's what they used on the Libyan attack, I guess.
That's
That's
correct.
the main...
That's probably a fighter pilot's best friend.
Is that right?
Very reliable missile.
Now, you got a checklist you go through, and this is called pre-flight.
This is the pre-flight. That's correct.
Are we in it now?
We're in it right now. Here in the midst
So you're
of it.
looking over everything, and you're...
What we need to do next is take a look down the engine.
To get Ike and his radar intercept officer airborne, there is a multicolored, highly precise, but very tense launching ballet. From the yellow-shirted plane director, arms signaling the jets into position, to the safety men in white, checking flaps and movable parts, the red shirts, the ordies, the ordnance men, pulling the safety wires on the missiles, the hookup man in green, duck walking beneath the plane to attach the launch bar to the catapult hook, the catapult officer in yellow, kneeling and flexing on the slick and glistening deck, and finally the green shirt on the catwalk, scanning fore and aft before hitting the red fire button. When you leave here, where do you go and what do you do?
First of all, you try to get your head back on straight after a cat shot. And then usually you climb overhead and get some gas. The F-14's not known for its good gas mileage. And then you pick an operating area. You know, the Mediterranean is actually fairly crowded.
And what sort of traffic do you encounter in the Mediterranean other than your own people?
A lot of commercial traffic.
Now, since the Libyan operation, have you encountered any Libyan fighter planes? Are they coming out, seeking you out, or just watching you, or vice versa?
Well, as far as the Libyan situation goes, I can't go into any hypothetical situations with you. Just not allowed to do that in the business.
Well, that's the Admiral's answer, Lieutenant. But my question wasn't hypothetical. My question is, since you've been in the Mediterranean, have you come across any Libyan fighters in the air while you've been out?
I personally have not, no.
You have not. Even so, pilots on the Enterprise are generally on some sort of alert, anywhere from 30 minutes to 5 minutes, which means actually being in the plane and ready to go. Flying, of course, is what these pilots look forward to. Intercepts, mock combat, target practice, bombing runs. What they don't always look forward to is landing. This is the ultimate test for a naval aviator. Navy pilots call it a controlled crash, fraught with danger, totally unforgiving of mistakes. The pilots joke about hitting the boat, but putting a 20-ton F-14 down on a moving carrier deck at 130 miles an hour is no joke. It requires extraordinary perception, acuity, courage, and cockiness. What is it that's so special about being on an aircraft carrier?
It's a very high pressure, high stress environment. And let's face it, when a normal pilot returns from his mission is over. He rolls out and flares onto a 12,000-foot runway. For us, when the mission's over, we're just getting started. The work begins. Bringing an airplane aboard the carrier is probably the most demanding thing that we do, especially at night.
Somebody said landing on a carrier at night is like going into a closet, turning the light off, closing the door, and then feeling around. Does that sound about right?
At best, yes.
Why is it so hard?
Well, flying at night, all your cues are gone. Things that you take for granted in the daytime, you're now working for. For instance, keeping your wings level. There's no horizon out there. You have to make a concerted effort to keep your wings level. That's more concentration. You're looking down at a carrier that, no kidding, it looks about like a pinball machine at the end of a football field. You're half a mile away, closing at 130, 140 knots. You got to figure out where the runway is and where you want to land and put it down there. Attention to detail, keen concentration. It's not much fun.
What makes it even less fun is knowing that rarely does a carrier finish a cruise without a mishap. The Enterprise lost an F-14 pilot and radar officer in a freak accident at the start of its cruise in January. The carrier Forrestal lost an F-14 and pilot the day after it replaced the Enterprise in the Mediterranean 3 weeks ago. The Navy says, however, its accident record has improved dramatically in the last 15 years, with more discipline, more attention to health, greater awareness of safety, and constant practice and grading. Every landing is rated by the landing signal officers, and the competition among the pilots is intense. Pilots apply full power at the last second of their landings, so that if they miss all 4 restraining wires stretched across the deck, they will not lose their airspeed and can make another approach. The best landings are the ones in which the plane's hook catches the number 3 wire. But on this day, Ike missed it. Were you pleased with the grade you got, Lieutenant?
Yes, I was. Can't do any better than that.
I thought the target was the 3 wire. Why'd you hit the 4 wire?
The target is the 3 wire, but occasionally it's such a dynamic environment, the hook will skip the 3 wire and catch the 4, and that's why it's there.
The hook will skip the 3 wire.
Correct.
But I mean, you're the pilot, don't you take the blame for not hitting the 3 wire?
Not at all. The wind changes, you can blame the navigator, and also the ship's deck pitches every now and then.
But at the briefing before you went out, the last words I heard you say were, okay guys, okay on the 3 wire, piece of cake. And you came in and hit the 4.
Yeah, the ship must have caught a wave right as I touched down.
Hearing a fighter pilot blame the waves for a 4-wire landing would amuse his natural rival, the attack bomber pilot, who is born thinking he flies the critical mission.
Fighters sometimes get locked into just hanging around overhead, hanging on the blades, if you will, at slow airspeed, saving gas, just standing by to be ready.
You make it sound like the F-14 guy is really not needed around here much.
Oh, they're needed in a pinch.
This is Baggs. He's an A-6 bomber pilot.
The attack mission of bombing and low levels has more intrigue to me than the fighter role of high in the sky. I prefer low and fast, if you will.
Baggs is 31. He's a lieutenant. He grew up in Africa, the son of a Baptist missionary. He's a graduate of Bob Jones University. He's been flying for the Navy since 1981. Would you describe for me, Lieutenant, what the characteristics are of a first-class Navy pilot?
Oh, I don't know, a combination of athletics, a certain amount of courage, and drive. You can't tell somebody to come out and do this. He has to want to do it and want to keep trying hard enough to keep doing it well.
Lost on a painted sky.
Baggs, who is married and the father of 2, is also known as Cecil B. DeBaggs because he makes home movies for his squadron with his videotape camera. In return, the wives send back their own videograms, and no matter how many times they get screened, they will tear up the eyes of the toughest pilot.
It doesn't come easy. You talk about life for 6+ months on an aircraft carrier. You get news from home that you can't do anything about. You live day by day. This cruise in particular, our families can't plan. Mail gets delivered late, stopped. We have to live with those situations, putting aside, anytime we go airborne, all those difficulties.
The Navy is now losing each year roughly the same number of pilots it is training. The Navy says it is 1,000 pilots short in the key ranks of lieutenant and lieutenant commander. It's not so much the money or the sea duty as it is the separation from his family, up to 8 and 9 months at a time, as one president after another has discovered gunboat diplomacy and has moved his carrier fleets from sea to shining sea at the first signs of trouble or terrorism. But whatever his burdens, you will not hear a carrier pilot speak ill of the United States Navy.
I'm 2 years overdue on my commitment now as it is. I'm still doing it, and what it is that keeps me doing it, job satisfaction, knowing I'm doing something important for myself, for my family's future, and, you know, the general American way of life is important to me. That's why I got into it in the first place. I think that's what's keeping me in it now.
As a Navy fighter pilot, what is your ideal mission?
Fight.
Fight.
Turn and burn.
Turn and burn. What does that mean?
Launch off the cat, engage an enemy, and go to Zone 5. Beat him in aerial maneuvers. That's my job.
To hear Ike say, fighting, that's my job, or to hear Baggs say, the American way of life, that's very important to me, is to hear two young men whose commitment to their country is without limit. It is also to hear again the sentiments which have motivated our fighting men for more than 200 years. Of course,